All right, welcome back to the Catholic Convert Show. It is Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, and we are back. This time I may look like I am under the influence, but I promise you that is just the pollen. 30 of the 37 years that I've spent down here in the South, I've never acclimated to it. So I'm not crying from the sheer sight of Ed's beauty. I'm not, sniffing anything off my desk. It's surely the pollen because in the South, from March until about May, everyone here looks like a lemon pepper chicken wing. But we're here. Ed, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right because it is a beautiful day here because, as you are well aware, it's always sunny in South Jersey. So we are looking good. We're feeling good. We don't have pollen up here. We never have rain. It's just perfect all the time.
No, no, no. You just have wise guys and
And
gangsters.
oh, that's true too. Yeah, but we can't talk about that.
No, 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 no. I watched the episode on The Sopranos with the Pine Barrens, and I know what it's like down there.
You think you know what it's like, but yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on down there. I've got stories. We'll share them at some point.
Well, now I'm intrigued and nervous. We might have to put a disclaimer for not for child consumption. I don't know what stories you are. I saw Deliverance.
Hey, all I can tell you, yeah, all I can tell you, yeah, there's some interesting folks down there, but I can also tell you that the Jersey Devil is for real. He exists. So
All right,
we'll
that's
leave it at that for
terrifying.
now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you saw Russell Brand, the at Rusty Rockets guy, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Several weeks went by. He was talking about possibly getting baptized. Well, this past week he did, and so look, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to sincerely dismiss the conviction of anyone's heart when they're saying they're converting to Christianity from any other
Mm,
faith or when they're joining the Catholic Church, whatever it is, right? No matter what they've done in the past, because I do not remember that point in the Bible when Jesus was like, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't be redeemed. That stuff you did in the past was too messed up. I never read that, that chapter, but a lot of people, and I guess you could say rightfully so, have cast some doubts on his sincerity because he is very into this like new age spirituality, Christ consciousness kind of thing.
mm,
Um, he had posted the video talking about before he was baptized, I'm praying the rosary, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then boom, I'm getting baptized. He got baptized. Well, he posted a video talking about how he got baptized, and then immediately after that, he had a video of him holding up tarot cards talking about tarot. Now, in his defense, he's been baptized for
yeah.
2 days. I think it was last Sunday he got baptized, right? He's been baptized for 2 days. He's very new
Yeah.
to Christianity, at least as far as I know. And, it took me 18 months to convert
Mm,
to where I was like all in Deus Vault. Let's take on the 17th Crusade kind of zealot, kind of zealotry for the faith. Um, But I don't know. I see people casting doubts on, these celebrity conversions, and rightfully so, because you see a lot of it, and it happens to be, um, from at least my point of view, the popular thing because everybody jumps on it, and it attracts attention and things like that. And so the sincerity of some of these is obviously, up to doubt, I guess you could say. Um, But I don't know. What do you think as far as all these different celebrity conversions that we're seeing? Some people are saying it's a new revival. It's a new renaissance of faith, which I've seen a lot of people, including myself, over the past couple of years coming to the church that have either been a part of the church before and then came back or never were and then coming to for the first time. What's your take on the size and sheer number of celebrity conversions and high profile like social media influencer conversions we're seeing.
Well, it's interesting, because also some people would say, well, is it done for, notoriety? Are they getting attention for it? And I think that especially if you're talking about folks who convert to Catholicism, when you're talking about people in Hollywood, converting to Catholicism is not the kind of attention you want. It's not going to bring a lot of good vibes from people out there. So there's a note of sincerity when they do it. And as far as what happens after they convert, and then you see them backtrack a little bit, like, and actually Russell Brand, if I read that correctly, he actually um, became a born again Christian, right? Not even Catholic in his case. Um, but then
Well,
you have
I
your
know he
Shia
was
LaBeouf and
baptized in the
or
Thames, but I don't know which denomination. I just know he was baptized.
yeah, yeah. But I think it was born again Christian, which is a whole nother thing. And I'm kind of, especially when he was talking about the rosary and things like that, I was kind of surprised he went in that direction. But I feel like he'll still, if he keeps studying like he had been, I think he'll find his way to the Catholic Church. You look like even like Rob Schneider, and when you look at what he was talking about and why he converted to specifically Catholicism, I thought it was beautiful. He talked uh, about forgiveness and not only being forgiven by Christ for things that he has done, but learning how to forgive others for things that he felt, the ways that he had been slighted over the years, and he had been hurt, especially when you're in a kind of a position that they are, guys like him are, like the job that they do. You probably get a lot of grief from a lot of different people, but getting back to the conversions in general, I just think it shows you that in this day and age, people are looking for something. They're looking for direction. They're looking for reason in their life. Why am I here? What is expected of me? And I think especially, once you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, you start think about, well, what's next? When I pass from this earth, what's waiting for me? And and I think it's a response to that. So, and I'm not surprised that you might see folks once they convert, they might do or say something that just doesn't seem to fit in the Catholic mold, but it's because it's a learning process. It just like you mentioned with Russell Brand there and the tarot cards. It's they're going to slip up. They're going to make, I don't know if you can even call it mistakes. I think it's just part of the searching process and figuring out how do you live now that you've become a Catholic or just in general a Christian. What's expected of me? How am I going to live out the rest of my life? So, but to me, the big takeaway is they are converting, and to me, and that's wonderful because the world in the last few years has I don't know, has concerned me a bit. We'll say that the direction that we've been going in so many areas, but
Yeah, I mean,
but
yeah,
God
I
bless
get
him.
the
Like, look,
conversion side of it.
you see that like Shia there. He says now that he's Catholic, he's thinking about becoming a deacon, which would have to be a couple years down the road. But it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I get the conversion side of it. It's never a bad thing when someone gets baptized. It's that is a triumphant and rejoicing worthy moment, when that happens. Um, Obviously no one walks the straight and narrow path
Mm,
perfectly. I don't, you don't, nobody listening to this does, regardless of it, they say otherwise.
mhm.
Um, I just think it's really easy for us to doubt when we see some of
Yeah.
these conversions from whether they're big social media personalities or they're celebrities, and we see the previous life that they've lived. Because for us, you know, most of us haven't had our lives lived in front of the paparazzi's camera. So if someone, a regular Joe Sixpack says, "Hey, I'm converting and I'm going to join the Catholic Church," da 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 da, I was like, "Hey, great for you. Congratulations." And some of them are like,
Mhm.
"Why?" or whatever. But when you have these people, like there's been a couple of notable porn stars that have joined the Catholic Church and converted and all this other.
Yeah,
And no pun intended, their lives have been lived in front of the camera too. But people really doubt the sincerity of their conversion because we, I know we're not supposed to judge, but we do. It's human nature, and we see someone's past
yeah,
because it's been lived in front of a camera in a public sphere or whatever, and
sure.
it makes it easier for us to doubt. But at the same time,
Yeah,
I think it's okay to doubt because you can't take anything you
sure.
see at face value. But at the same time,
Yeah,
I'm seeing people take that doubt way too far, and they're jumping into, "You shall never be redeemed because what you did." And that's where
yeah,
it's falling into the red line. It's crossing that line of it's okay to doubt. You don't, I might doubt myself sometimes whether or not I'm a good Catholic, but to come
yeah,
right out and just say, doesn't matter whether you're baptized, whether you receive the sacraments, whether you're confirmed, whether you're receiving, Holy Communion, whether you spend 27 hours a day in adoration, you'll never be saved. That to me is just kind of, angry bitterness from people.
y that's exactly what it is. Yeah, and I've seen it a lot, especially you mentioned there were, I guess, 2 different porn stars I've seen have converted recently, and one of them, uh, I know on Twitter, she goes by, like, Missy B or something like that, and I'll tell you what, she has been posting nonstop every day novenas and pictures of her going to daily mass and things like that. I mean, she seems incredibly sincere, and she has been attacked unbelievably. Now, the only good thing I would say about that is the vast majority of Catholics that I've seen commenting on her tweets are basically of the welcome home variety, and it's folks of other denominations that have said things like "You'll never be redeemed, you'll never be saved." Once a with once a whore, always a whore kind of a thing, which is a terrible thing to say to somebody. But which just tells me that yeah, it comes from a place of bitterness, of anger, and it certainly comes from a lack of understanding of Christianity in general and what's offered to us from Christ or through Christ. So, um, regardless of where that venom comes from, it's it it, it should it's like I don't know what the point is other than and a lot of times people try to bring others down to pick themselves up, and I don't know if that's where it comes from, but um, again, yeah, you have to wait and see. Are they in 6 months going to fall back into previous behaviors and things like that? Um, yeah, again, I take it at face value as well. Someone says that they found the love of Christ and it helped them to lift them up from the life they were living. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna believe them, and until I see otherwise. And like you said earlier, you, me, nobody that's listening to this is a perfect Christian, a perfect Catholic, and certainly never will be. So, if these folks do tumble backwards a little bit, also, I think you give them benefit of the doubt and you don't say, okay, see, it wasn't real. They didn't really convert. They didn't really change their way of behavior. Because listen, I know from my experience, I fall into the same sins over and over again, regardless of how hard I try not to. So
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you made that most of the Catholics, and I've seen the person you're talking about on there. Um, Most of the Catholics that have been commenting on her
mm,
post have been supported. There have been some that are like, I'm going to reserve my opinion until you've, done it for a while. You're not, you know, because there is a zeal and a zest that comes with being a new convert. You're instantly you go from being Ragnar Lothbrok to Guy de Lusignan. All of a sudden, you're like leading the Crusades.
mm,
But when I see that the majority of the the negative comments coming from people in Protestant denominations. And this is not me trying to dig on
Yeah.
Protestants because that's not the purpose of this show at all. It it kind of flies in the
No, not at all.
face of some of their once saved, always saved uh, ideals that they have in the some of the Protestant denominations. Which that's confusing
Yeah.
to me to begin with because not all Protestants believe that. And so that's why it's difficult
Mm,
to debate Protestants because no two Protestants agree the same way on the faith. So you're like, I don't know which point to make when you're trying to
yeah.
debate with them. But it does kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
seem self-defeating. It defeats their own ideology of the once save, always save. So it's confusing to me. But no, I agree with you. I try not to give I try to give the benefit of the doubt when it comes to someone saying that, I'm coming into the church, no matter what church that is. I've lived a life of sin and now I am turning to God. Okay. I will take that at the value that they said it. I will do so with the understanding that they're not going to be perfect because I've fallen 27 times today, right?
Yeah.
But I will also
Yeah. Right.
still reserve
Right.
that doubt uh, if I have a suspicion that they're only doing it because they have fans, right? Or they've hopped onto what looks to be a
Mm,
trend. And maybe that's just something I need to fix because when I see people that have, like these celebrities and they're joining in with all these other celebrities and influencers jumping on taking the Christ pill, it's hard for me to believe as much as I want to believe, but it's hard for
yeah.
me to believe that all of them are genuine.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But well, and but I would say then in the case of a porn star, you talk about having fans. I would think becoming a Catholic or a Christian is not going to help your fandom if you're a porn star. In fact, it might turn a few of them off.
Right. I
So
was more referring to like
in
the
that
the
in the case of
celebrities, the
that, those
ones
two
that are
young
like the
ladies,
major influencers.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, I agree with that. And it's interesting you mentioned the whole once saved always saved because obviously I see a lot of flaws in that, but um, because then you look at the other side of that where I think there's a confusion when they'll say, well, you Catholics are all about a works based salvation, and that's completely wrong. Um, but but we would respond to that by saying, well, if you are saved, although I would say we're redeemed, and salvation is something we have to continue to work on. But if you are redeemed, you're going to show that to the world by your works, and so to me, doubting these people who say that they've been saved by Christ, and who are living now a much better and a much more wholesome and much more Christian life, to me that demonstrates that, yeah, they have heard the message, they have believed the message, and they're now living the message. So because if you're gonna say, people tell me, like, I've seen pastors in the last couple months actually get on there, on their little their tweets and stuff, and say, "Hey, if you're gonna ask me specifically if I've been saved, can I now live my life any way I want, and can I live a sinful life and retain that salvation?" They would say the simple answer is yes, I can. Which to me is just foolishness. It's ridiculous. Um, so that's why I said, like, to me, you take a wait and see attitude. You've got these people that are saying they've converted. Well, let's see how they live out the rest of their life. But again, you know, but I would look at it from an area of, wow, you made that first step. God bless you. Anything I can do to help out. And and then you just sit back and wait and see how they finish out and see if they finish strong. See if they run the good race, as they say.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. I think a lot of what I see from some Protestant denominations is they seem to be using God as a sort of fire insurance. Like, well, I was saved,
Hmm.
so I'm going to continue doing everything I was already doing, but God loves me and God forgives me. I'm not
Hmm.
remorseful in any way. Even if I say I am, my actions
Yeah.
are showing otherwise. But on the last minute of my deathbed, I plan on being really sorry. Like I said,
Yeah.
it seems like they're using God as fire insurance. But if you're truly repentant, if you're truly remorseful about your sins, you will not keep doing them. I mean, it almost sounds like a guy who beats his wife. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. Well, then you do it
Yeah.
again, and you wonder why you're in jail and she's, escaped taking the kids, rightfully so. And you'll never have the same freedoms again, which you shouldn't, because you were not sorry. If you were sorry, you wouldn't have kept doing it
Mm.
intentionally. But I think that does go to imply where some people don't understand the nuances between what constitutes venial sin and mortal sin, because there has to be the
Mm.
intention,
Hmm.
there has to be the knowledge
Yeah.
that you know it's a sin, and at the same time there has to be the willingness to do it, right? So it's,
Right.
I know this is bad, I know this is a sin, I know this sin will poison my relationship with God, but I'm going to choose to do it anyway. If you know all those things, then you are in active commission of mortal sin, not something like, I lost my temper
Yeah.
in a moment of anger and I slapped my dog, right? Okay, it's a sin. It's not a mortal
Yeah.
sin because you were not in full control of your faculties, right? You still need to stop doing that. Do not hit your dog, or if you're like the politicians in South Dakota, don't shoot them in gravel pits either. But if you know it's wrong, you know it's a sin, you know it's going to poison your relationship with God and it's going to sever that connection, you don't intentionally do it.
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of good points there, and I think that people make this mistake of, like you had mentioned when you started there, about, well, I can live any way I want as long as I kind of, uh, recapitulate at the end of my life with my last breath. I say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I'll be fine." And how ridiculous is that? Because then you're making the assumption that God doesn't know your heart and God doesn't know your intention. And so if you're thinking, well, it's okay, I have this get out of sin free card that I can pull on my deathbed. Well, first of all, again, God knows what your thought process is, and He knows that you're trying to scam Him, and that's never going to work. And the other thing is, hey, when you step off a bus and get splattered, then that kind of puts that whole plan to waste anyway. So better to live your life as though, what was it? I think it was Saint Augustine who said, uh, "Treat your body like you're going to live forever, and treat your soul like you're going to die today." And I think that's the way we
Yeah,
need
that
to
that was
approach
that was
these
from
things. You,
Confessions. That was great.
yeah, okay, I thought so. I get so, but it's sound advice, isn't it? I mean, be prepared for your death. Be ready. Keep yourself in that state of as close to a state of grace as you can, so that if your number comes up today, you're not going to be shocked at where you wind up. Um, I think that's something we always need to keep in mind, and that concept of, that's why I say that once saved, always saved is very dangerous, because okay, I've made my proclamation. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Boom. I can just go live my life and it's going to end well for me. That is just a very dangerous way to live if you have any concerns about where you're going to wind up afterwards, right? It seems
Well, I
obvious,
think
but
one I think one of my favorite things from Saint Augustine. He's my youngest son's patron saint, by the way. Um, and it it really
It's a good
speaks
one.
to me. Yeah, it really speaks to me is when he said, "Lord, make me chaste, just not right now." It's because he was
Just
so
not now.
indulgent into living his he was so indulgent into living the drunken, sin and sex filled life that he had. He was like, God, I know you're real.
And
I know that I need to do this, but not right now, please. Just give me some more time to get it out of my system, kind of thing.
yeah,
And it took him a long time to finally
yeah,
get to,
yeah.
that point.
It- we, we've all said that same thing though, haven't we? At one point or another. Just I'm having too much fun, Lord. Just next week, next year, whatever. On my deathbed, I'll straighten it all out. I promise. But
Yeah, yeah,
again,
yeah.
like I
Just
said,
one more
but
time.
you don't know when that last day is. You don't know when that last moment is. So you just won't. It's just yeah. He's gonna roll the dice one more time. God,
But
it worked
speaking
out
of
all right
that,
for Saint
I was
Augustine, I
looking
think.
at yeah, it worked out for him. I think he did okay. But speaking of that, I
He did
saw in the
okay.
headlines today, of never knowing when your last day is going to come.
Yeah.
I saw today that
Mm,
the Monsignor that had been kidnapped, he was normally a go-to between the cartels that were like at war with each other. He was like the go-between. It's Monsignor Salvador Rangel. He
mm,
disappeared um, not long ago, and this story comes out of Mexico City. So he's a retired Roman Catholic bishop who was known for trying to mediate between drug cartels in Mexico. He was recently
mm,
found and he was taken to the hospital after what appears to have been like an express kidnapping. He was very quick and over and done with kind of thing,
mm,
thank God. And that's what was reported by the Mexican Council of Bishops yesterday. But they said in a statement that he
mm,
disappeared on Saturday, and then um, he called on his captors to release him. But again, somehow or another, they
mm,
decided, okay, you're gone. We'll let you go. They just dropped him off somewhere. But he was found and he was taken to the hospital. Uh, he did say that he begged his captors while he was there to allow him to take his medications as an act of humanity. And apparently, he was the bishop of
mm,
one of the most violent dioceses down there at Chilpancingo, Chilapa. I'm probably butchering the way that's supposed to be pronounced, but it's in the southern state of Guerrero, where the drug cartels have been fighting turf battles for years, right? But he was
mm.
abducted just north of there and then dropped off just not long after, a couple of days, right? But that's what he did. He was the mediator, like try to be the peacekeeper between two different cartels because one, the violence needs to stop. Two, when bullets fly, they
Mm.
don't respect the intended target. They go where they're aimed, right? I remember when I lived down in the Southwest
Yeah.
when there was some cartel conflict going on in Juarez, and we weren't far from the Bridge of Americas right there in El Paso, Texas. So you could be down there by the
Mm.
BOA in El Paso, and you can look over the bridge and you can see the gun battles happening between the cartels. Bullets are flying across the border, you know, and they're hitting buildings in El
Yeah.
Paso. So that's what his thing was. He wanted to be down there as the mediator to keep the peace. Look, maybe you give them this street. I don't know how I was doing it. This is my, what I understand of the situation. If you secede this street and they take this street, maybe they'll secede this, area and you take it, to try to get them to come to terms without violence rather than, hostile takeovers of territory. but praise God, he was found, and it
Mm,
looks like he'll be okay. But dude, it
good.
wasn't until I became a Catholic that and I see stories, and stuff like this, but it wasn't until I became a Catholic that I even realized that depending on the regime at the time, Mexico has
Mm.
been really brutal to Catholics.
Oh, obviously, yeah. I mean, look at go back to the early 1900s when you had uh, the Cristeros, the Cristero War, where Catholicism was banned by the government, and how many tens of thousands of Catholics were killed? How many were martyred? No, priests weren't allowed to, if they walked outside of their church, they weren't allowed to be dressed as a priest. If they were, they'd be put in prison. Some of them were executed. It's yeah. We always think about Mexico as this Catholic country, but it's had its moments for sure. And now with like you're mentioning about this priest with the drug wars and things like that. I think there are a lot of unsung hero priests out there people are not aware of, and they think that okay, this happened years ago, decades ago, centuries ago. But no, man, depending on where you're living in this world, if you're a Catholic priest, you take your life in your hands. Um, and I think that's always going to be the case. The Catholic Church is always going to be a target for just about anybody who wants to make a name for themselves. I mean, you see stories like that happen here, even in the states, in certain, in places like Chicago or New York, whatever, depending on what neighborhood you live in, where someone will walk in during a mass even and harass a Catholic priest or beat up a Catholic priest or worse. It's if you're a Catholic priest, you maybe not to the extent of uh, some other jobs like police officer or something, but you've got a target on your back, especially if you walk outside of your church, of your the same thing with sisters too. I know a lot of uh, sisters who purposely work in very bad sections of Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, things like that, and they do it because they want to be among the people that they feel need them most. But man, you hear the stories of the things that they go through just trying to walk down the street to go to the store, or whatever, because they've got a habit on and the harassment they go through and everything. So yeah, but I think that's something to be said about the Catholic Church in general. As a Catholic, I think more than any other Christian sect, you are looked at by the bad guys as someone who needs to go away because honestly, as long as the Catholic Church is around, um, the bad guys are not going to win. As far as the big picture is concerned, and I think it upsets people when Christ said that even the gates of hell weren't going to prevail against Catholicism. So, but yeah, that's an interesting story there out of Mexico, and God bless that priest for taking that on, right? You never think you're gonna be ordained a priest that your job is gonna be standing between warring drug factions and trying to get everyone to just get along.
Yeah, this is not how I expected things to go when I went to seminary. What's going on?
Exactly,
No, I mean, I get
exactly.
that, but
But it's true. I
like
mean,
I
I
said,
yeah,
but like you said, most people think that, Mexico is this strictly, predominantly Catholic country, especially when Our Lady of Guadalupe Cathedral,
mhm,
everything right there in Mexico City. You've got multiple apparitions there. And, I mean, Juan Diego being probably the most notable, but it kind of
yeah,
blew my mind that all these very violent anti-Catholic movements have taken place, again in Mexico, especially since the
yeah.
conquistadors came and converted everyone there at one point. But you had the various regime changes over the years. So it just kind of blew my mind to learn that. Now, I mean, obviously, I've heard about the bloodshed in England where you had houses that had priest holes where they could hide the priest whenever someone came
Mm.
looking for them, and things like that. But no, it just really surprised me. But it is funny that even though we're not, at least right now, experiencing any of the violence towards Catholics, at least at a notable scale. Obviously, there's still going to be individual actions, but Catholicism,
Yeah.
well, anti-Catholicism for that matter, does seem to be the last socially acceptable prejudice out there.
It is. Look at over the last few years, how many churches have been vandalized, churches that have been burnt down to the ground, and you don't typically see that when you turn on the nightly news. You get that when you go through the lesser known news sources and you find out about these things. But we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of cases of like I said, vandalism or theft or destruction of various Catholic properties. Um, even just spray painting really ridiculous things across the doorways of churches, Catholic churches, and things like that. Some people they see Catholicism in particular, Christianity to a lesser extent, as like um, a blockade to the way they're living their life. People, they don't want to know about God. They don't want to think about God. They don't want anyone telling them how to live, and they see the Catholic Church as trying to tell people how to live, which isn't necessarily true. I mean, the Catholic Church will say if you're looking for salvation at the end of the line, you should live this particular way. But they're not putting a gun to your head and making you do it. They offer it to you. They say, "Come on in, join the church, live this way, and you'll be happy where it takes you." But they're not forcing anyone to live that way. But I think that some people see the Catholic Church as saying, "You will live this way," and then so they, if they're not living that way, they see the church as something that needs to be stopped and needs to be put down. And again, it's obviously never going to happen. It's never going to be successful, but I do feel that people see the church as an enemy in regards to how they're living their life.
Well, yeah, and I did see that anti-Catholicism is as American as apple pie.
Hmm.
Folks can click on the link to the Catholic Convert website in the YouTube channel description and see, you know, it lasted all the way very strictly all the way through Kennedy, where the
Hmm.
KKK got involved in
Yeah.
being their anti-Catholic movement, simply because they didn't believe that John F. Kennedy would be able to separate his duty to America from his religious conviction and duty to Rome. And anti anti-papist propaganda flooded, especially here in the South. It was really big here.
Yeah. Yeah. But it always surprises me too when people say things like that. They're afraid that, oh, if a Catholic is in office, I mean, obviously they don't have that concern with Joe Biden because he's about as Catholic as a rabbit sitting on my lawn right now. Um,
Catholic,
but uh,
Catholic
they
in
have a
quote.
concern that yeah, exactly. But they have concerns that if certain Catholics get into the White House, they get into the Senate, get into Congress, that their Catholic faith is going to regulate how they make decisions of things. To which I would say, good, they did. We'd live in a much better world. But I think that's a silly premise anyway, because whatever your faith is, it's going to have an influence on your decision making, isn't it? And even if you're an atheist, that's going to influence the way you make decisions. So to say that specifically we're in danger if a Catholic lives out his faith in office, I think that's such a ludicrous statement, because whatever your belief system is, it's going to influence the way that you govern. And I'd much rather have someone making decisions based on their Catholic faith than someone making decisions um, on like for instance being an atheist. At least there's going to be a level of morality that's part of their decision making process.
Yeah, maybe we can get Pope Pius V to run for office.
He'd be a good choice. He'd be a good choice. I like that guy. He's our saint of the day, isn't he? He's a good guy.
He-
He was a yeah, he was a Dominican, which you can't go wrong with a Dominican. Let's just start right there. Those guys rock out loud. I mean, St. Dominic, the Rosary, all that sort of fun stuff, and uh, and Pius V, man, he lived in a tough time, 16th century. You're on the heels of the Reformation and things like that. Um, and I mean, he was there for the Council of Trent, the Counter Reformation, um, and obviously the big threat at another big threat at the time was the Ottoman Empire, which was just running roughshod through the world. And people may not even realize it, but you know, Christianity had this tenuous foothold in Europe that was really in danger of being lost. And we have to credit Pius V with putting together the Holy League, a ragtag group of Catholic countries that put together their little mini armada. And of course, we've all heard about the Battle of Ponto. Was it 1571, October 7th, when a very small Holy League held off an attempt from the Ottoman Empire to just kind of take over Europe and honestly potentially wipe out Christianity. So and the way he did it was brilliant. I mean, this guy Paul V was a gangster, man, back in the 16th century. So he has this little mini army put together, and then he asks everyone at the same time on the same day throughout all of the Christian world that existed at the time to pray the rosary. And he credits everyone praying the rosary with the victory that took place at Lepanto. And because of that, he had started the feast of Our Lady of Victory, which then I think it was Gregory the 13th, who eventually changed the name to the Feast of the Holy Rosary. But originally it was Our Lady, and we still call one of the many names we call Mary, the Our Lady of Victory. But it's all because of the Battle of Lepanto and the guts that Paul V had there to stand up to the Ottoman Empire. And thank God that he did.
yeah, you're talking about. We all remember the Battle of Ponto. Yeah, I've got that written on my whiteboard because that's one of the things that I'm definitely going to, have remembered there. Yeah, 100%. I remembered that and knew what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, he's a solid guy. Not a particularly handsome man, but he got the job done.
I mean, neither are we. That's what we do. I mean, there's a reason
Well, yeah, in the
why
strictest sense.
we're not using 4K cameras.
For sure. For sure.
No, whenever I hear about some of these really awesome popes, and then I hear people complain about Pope Francis,
Yeah.
and they try to say, "Oh, he's the worst pope ever." Um,
Hmm.
you need to read some history because we've had 266 popes from Peter to Francis, and there have been about 2 dozen
Yeah.
that make Charles Manson look like a saint as far as how devout they were. I mean, buying the papacy. Um, what was it? Benedict the 10th. He was murdering people. So, I mean, it's been a pretty, uh, you know, rough
Hey, you need a hobby.
history. But when people turn around and they try to say, "Well, how could you trust it?" I'm like, Christ handpicked 12 apostles, and one of them still subjected to human nature and greed. and defied him. Our
Mhm.
trust is that the Pope, the Holy Father, is only infallible when speaking ex cathedra. And that's when he is quoting
Exactly.
approved traditional church doctrine, right? But even Vatican II acknowledged, and everybody wants to argue Vatican II, and I wasn't born then, so I don't have anything to compare it to. Some of the older Catholics might. I know you do. You were like 35 when at Vatican II, but the Pope is not an infallible person, right? He is a person. He deserves our prayers. We are obligated to pray for him because we need his strong and just
Mhm.
leadership to guide the church according to God's will. You know, people want to complain about the Pope. Well, pray for him. It's the same thing with Joe Biden, right? And I'm over here being funny with my
Yep.
quotes. If he's Catholic, then we should pray that he gets a whole lot better at being a Catholic, right? Not c- completely shutting it down.
Yeah.
That
It's true, isn't it? I mean,
he's
and people
not
will use
enough. We pray for
the
them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this idea that and I think that the whole ex cathedra thing throws people off a little bit, and they're under the impression that every single word that comes out of the mouth of a pope that we are all obligated to immediately go right along with it, and of course that's not the case at all. And um, in the case of Francis, I obviously he doesn't cause any what would be the word, but he doesn't cause any of this fragmentation within the Catholic faith. He doesn't do any of that purposefully. I think that when he speaks, he's speaking from the heart. He's speaking what he believes. And again, as long as it's not ex cathedra, it's not gospel, as they say. Um, and people make that mistake. And the thing of it is, you got to, people are looking to cut him down and cut the Catholic Church down at any opportunity. So you wonder how many times that something is quoted from him where he's walking down a hallway and somebody yells a question at him, or he's at some event and somebody tries to corner him with a question that's going to be difficult for him to answer in just a few words. And so until and if he actually says something from the share of St. Peter that just seems to really be earth-shatteringly against Catholic teaching, I'm not going to be concerned. Yeah, we've had great popes, we've had mediocre popes, we've had not so good popes, we've had popes that you wonder where they wound up because it probably wasn't heaven. But that doesn't. But the problem is that then people think that negates uh, the papacy. You know what I'm saying? Is that they think, well, if you've had bad popes, well, then how can you defend the papacy in general? It doesn't make any sense. Well, but again, like you mentioned, even with the disciples and Judas, one one bad apostle doesn't wipe out the ministry of Christ, and one or two bad popes doesn't wipe out the Catholic Church. If anything, it just proves that that popes, like the rest of us, are human. They are fallible in their day to day lives, and I mean, because I think about that, like, what if we looked at every everybody's life under that same microscope? Like, I had a plumber come to my house and he did a really lousy job. So all plumbers are horrible. And I don't believe in the whole profession of plumbing anymore. Or, anything that you do, anybody that you run into a bad example of them. Well, that means that whole way of living is wrong and is messed up. And people do that with the papacy too. I heard something from a pope that I don't like, I don't agree with. So that negates 2,000 years of the papacy because I don't agree with this one thing that I heard. Again, like I said, unless he's changing doctrine, which he has not, or unless he's changing dogma, which he has not, I'm not really concerned. I'm heck. I mean, I thought Benedict was a great pope. A lot of people would disagree with me. A lot of people had problems with things that he said off the cuff. Um, and you can say that with any pope. I'm sure. Listen, I might have had we. I think if we were having this little conversation 2,000 years ago, we might have taken issue with some things that Peter said. I'm sure we would have at some point.
I mean,
But
somebody
again,
was going to point
that
out the
doesn't
fact that, well, he
mean he
denied
wasn't pope.
Jesus 3 times.
Yeah, yeah, right. And and luckily, but see, that's the thing, isn't that the beautiful thing about it? And then he sought forgiveness from Christ. He received it, and we go on. And then he winds up being, from what I understand, a pretty good pope. So you go from denying Christ 3 times to being the first pope of the church founded, the one and only church founded by Christ, um, and uh, and having a pretty good reputation, I would say overall. Good old Peter. So again,
Yeah, you know,
we
last
can make
year,
mistakes, but it's what do you do after that? What do you do after a mistake? What's it?
yeah, last year on All Saints Day, my daughter
Mhm.
uh, my family got to lead the procession into the church for All Saints Day, and my daughter
Nice.
got to carry the relic of Saint Peter that we have in our church, because we have a
Oh
fragment of the
wow.
true cross, we have a relic of Saint Peter, we've got a relic of Jose Maria Escriva, Linus,
Oh.
Clement, and a few others that are always up on the altar of sacrifice right there in the sanctuary. And
Mm,
when my family was chosen to, lead the procession right behind the altar servers, and the priests. Well, the priests were behind us, but we were right behind the altar servers. Um, they asked my daughter, uh, which of the relics would you like to carry? And again, it was like Peter, Jose Maria Escriva, Linus, and I believe I want to say it was Saint Rita, but I'm not 100%
mhm.
certain. Anyway, I'm like leaning down, like I'm giddy, right? I'm leaning down. I'm like, Big Peter, Big Peter, say Peter. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, she's like, why? I was like,
Yeah.
because he's the first pope.
He's Peter.
I'm like, it's
Come on.
Peter. She's like, fine. But then she's leaning up. She's because it was the director of the catechism classes at our parish that was asking her, and she's like, well, do you have a Saint Catherine? Because I mentioned yesterday that her patron is Catherine of Siena. And she's like, no, baby girl,
Yeah.
we don't have, we don't have. She's like, I guess I'll carry Peter. It was, she's
I
11
guess.
years old.
I guess
I guess, you know, but
if
no,
I have to.
yeah, it's such a burden, right? But no, I get what you're saying. There's you can't please everyone. No one is. It's no different than, some people think Ronald Reagan was great. Some people think Nancy was better when she ran for him during the second term. You know, everybody, everybody's
I,
gonna
I,
have their own opinions.
absolutely, but I think you have to. I think you have to look at the papacy as a whole. And what does the papacy mean to the church, and what does the papacy mean to the faithful? And I think overall, over 2,000 years, it's been very positive. It's been a good thing. I have a extensive collection of Catholic memorabilia. Some people refer to my basement as the Vatican Annex, but one of the things I'm most proud of is that I have somewhere between a dozen and 15 papal briefs, mostly from the 17th through 19th century. So some really great popes in there, including several of them from Pope Leo the 13th, who's my favorite pope of all time for various reasons. But it's kind of cool when you think about it. I've got these documents that, they used to call them papal bulls, and then they changed it to papal brief. I think they call it something else now. But you've got these huge handwritten in Latin on vellum documents that were actually looked at, touched, held by these great men of our church. These wonderful popes. It's kind of a neat thing to have. And you're mentioning the relics that you have in your parish there. And I've also got, I guess, about a dozen or so relics, which are something I also cherish. And it's, these are some of the things that we have in Catholicism that a lot of people would take issue with, but I think they're just part of the beauty of the faith in general. I mean, and some of them hold tremendous value to me. I have a relic from St. John Newman, who was, of course, a bishop in the late 1800s in Philadelphia. And I go to his shrine as often as I can. It's a beautiful place to go. His body is incorruptible. You can go see him. He's there in the altar, which is a pretty cool thing. But
Yeah,
listen,
he's the one that
when I was
founded the Brompton Oratory in London.
mm,
That's where Candace Owens just got her
I'm not
baptism.
familiar with that, but it might be. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, you should check it out. Yeah, the
For
Brompton
our
Oratory in London was founded by
Catholic
St. John
education
Newman.
system here. Oh, you're talking about John Newman as opposed to John Neumann.
Oh, I thought you said Newman. My mistake.
Because yeah, I'm sorry, I did say Newman, but I meant John Neumann. It's the German pronunciation there. But yeah, he was a bishop in Philadelphia back in the German section of Philadelphia back in the 1800s, and became a saint because of a lot of healings um, that he was responsible for. But it actually, in my family, one of the reasons I have such a devotion for Saint John Neumann is because um, I I used to go to Philadelphia with my mother when she had debilitating arthritis. And I remember this one time I was 12 or 13 years old, and I went with her uh, to Temple University Hospital. And the doctor said, and my mom was probably in her mid 40s at the time, and the doctor said to her, unfortunately, within a couple months, you're probably going to be wheelchair bound. And my mom, great faith that she had, uh, took it in stride. And we stopped on the way back to the train station. We stopped at the shrine of St. John Neumann and we prayed. And within a couple of months, her arthritis was gone. And we have the x rays, the before and after. It's amazing. Her hands, which were so gnarled and bent out of shape, were completely fine, just perfect. And she didn't have another issue with that for the rest of her life. So that's why I'm very proud now to have a relic from St. John Neumann, and lucky to live so close to the shrine that I can visit often and thank him for those years of health that he gave to my mom.
That's incredible. You know, the only relic that I have, it's third class. I don't know if you can see in resin in this crucifix, on the back
There
of
you
this
go.
crucifix, there
Yeah.
is a stone. It's just, again, third class relic that was laid down on the tomb of Christ in the Holy Sepulchre. And so it's the only one that I have, but, I'm not
Oh
feeling
wow, nice.
insignificant in any kind of yeah, I'm not feeling insignificant in any old kind of way listening to you brag over there.
No, 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 no. No, listen, I've been blessed that I've been able to track down the relics that I have. Like I said, I've got about a dozen or 15 or so first class relics, and they're great because they're great teaching tools when I'm in my CCD classes, when I'm in my Bible studies, and they're great to have, and people appreciate when I bring them along. It's just they're another one of those things. It's they're strictly Catholic, and they just make you feel so good about being Catholic. We have all these different sacramentals and these things that bring you closer to Christ and closer to His church, and we're very blessed in that manner.
Yeah, man. But we are coming up on the hour. Now, I know yesterday we ran 90 minutes. So today we're only going to run 60 because somebody out there was complaining that it was too long. Nah, I'm just kidding. It might be too long. I don't know. Ed and I can talk for 3 more hours if you want. Um, you know, neither one of us have
Absolutely.
very impressive. Yeah, we don't have impressive social lives, so we can talk for another 3 hours. But for the sake of
No,
YouTube, we're gonna wrap this one up at the hour. But before we do, I want to do a quick reminder for all of you. If you haven't yet, it is free to download. The only holy habit tracker that's even worth downloading. Hallow's great, awesome. But I'm just going to be honest, it's not so great when they have a pro choice celebrity advocating for their brand. You're not going to get that with Holy Habits. Dave Burke and Drago Dimitrov are uncompromising when it comes to sanctity. And if you're struggling with maintaining a daily rosary, daily holy hour, daily scripture reading, daily mass, whatever it is, download Holy Habits. It's free on the App Store, free on Google Play, and it'll make it a whole lot easier. And check out the Holiness Hub feature because it even suggests habits that are derived from and based on the 2,000 plus years of rich Catholic history. But we will wrap this up. By the way, I'm not being paid by Holy Habits. I'm just endorsing it. It's free to download. Why would they pay me? But no, we'll wrap this one up. Ed, good talking to you again, brother.
Yeah, like I say, I've been using it and I love it. Yep. Sounds good. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.